tonight.
Good evening, everybody.
Howdy.
Hi, David.
Hey, David.
Hello.
Hi, Margie.
Bill, you've got your hat and your jacket on. I can totally understand that.
It'll be cold by the time this is over. And then I'll be ready to go out.
Is it clear out, Bill?
I can only see to the north through cracks in the trees. I can see a cloud in the distance that's bright white, so that must be sunlight on it. And it's hazy blue above.
It's supposed to clear off, I think around 9 or 10.
Canberra
Yeah,
Bay is pretty cloudy at the moment, that's for sure.
It's about 50% cover here in the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually expecting to go out last night, and I actually did go out between, I think, 10:30 and 11:30, and by the time 11:30 was rolled around, everything closed up.
Yeah, I was done doing what I was doing by then. I just need about 20 minutes.
You're observing from your place or from the observatory?
Oh, down at the cricket field.
Oh, the
I
cricket
have
field. Okay.
I have a little project I'm doing.
Hmm.
Put me in for a few minutes to talk about it later, towards the end. I have no
Will do.
pictures.
Does look like the wind is kicking out there pretty good tonight.
That doesn't matter. I just parked my car as a wind block.
See, I can't do that, but there are benefits to being comically overmounted sometimes.
Wind makes it pretty ugly at Cattle Point, I'll tell you. Those winds that come howling down the street just bounce the scope around something fierce. Mind you, tomorrow night and Wednesday night, the wind is supposed to die back pretty good.
Yep.
And Friday or Saturday is new moon, so it's the high and low tides of the season coming up. Was looking the other day, and the low tide's going to be like 0.57 above datum, so it's going to be a pretty low tide. Where I was fishing last new moon, there was a 20-foot tide from high to low, and you should have seen the in-between tide currents that were ripping through there.
So are the most extreme tides we get then in January when we're near perihelion?
Good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Certainly these ones in August were pretty big. we were getting tidal currents that were in excess of 5 knots around the islands.
I remember one year my wife and I were camping on Galileo at Montague Harbor, and on the side where all the boats dock, where the marina is. And well, we were at the park, but you could see that. And we went out one morning, it was like a really low tide, and some person had not paid any attention to the tide charts, and their sailboat was just laying on its side in the mud. Just waiting for the tide to come back in so that they could get it out. Sure, it was a mess inside the cabin.
It would be, especially as the tide comes back in and the water starts washing inside.
Well, water and sand, Joe. Don't forget about-
Everything, yes. It all washes inside.
I do a Thursday walk with another person. So every Thursday we go and walk somewhere on a trail, somewhere within an hour of Victoria. And so the first time we went to Sydney Island was last year. And we walked out to the spit. We came back about halfway. We had our lunch on a log. We started walking back and went, uh-oh. Because on the way back, we were walking with our running shoes on, because of course everything is you can't walk on the rocks.
Pretty rough.
Yeah, because they're covered in
Barnacles.
barnacles. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we walked back just about below our knees in water. Yep. This year we went last Thursday and we went, okay, now we've got it. We know when the tides are.
It's fun doing that up at Rath, Trevor. Walk all the way out the 2 kilometers at low tide and then take your time walking back, trying to outrun the tide.
Yeah, you've got to keep moving.
Yeah.
It's very flat.
Well, as a fisherman, that's one of the things you want to do when you want to pre-scout the site you're going to fish at, so that when you're out there at low tide, you don't find yourself stranded when it comes back in.
There are apps for that.
Well, you still got to see the terrain. You got to be there.
Of
to know.
course, but at least you know when high tide is and low tide
Yeah,
is.
you know where high and low
how
tide is.
high and low it's going to be.
But you can get distracted if the fish are biting. So I got trapped once on the Kananaskis River because it's a river that's got a power dam on it. And I had waded across in a place where I wasn't paying attention, and the power company started letting water through, and I had the devil of a time getting back without going under.
Good evening, everyone. It's just about 25 to. So we have a few people who have asked to say something tonight. So we've got David, Dave with some Edmonton photos, John, I believe, and Bill Weir. Is there anybody else? And Joe, I think you said you had a photo as well.
Got one solar photo.
Okay. And but I did want to start with something that Jim Hesser couldn't join us tonight, but he passed on. So I'll just show this, that Frank Younger died on the weekend, for those of you who knew him. Let's see if this will, there. And so this is an email that's been circulated, and there will be a Zoom memorial service on Friday afternoon. So I will see if I can get this link. Oops, no, it's, of course it's gonna, hold on a second. Let's try that again, because I think it's gonna try and open my browser. I'll see if I can get that. So it will, I can send the link there. Oh, so now where have I gone? Okay. Oh, trying to see what happened. Okay, let's try that again. See what happens. You go away for a week and you can't remember how to use Zoom. It's terrible. All right. Yeah. Okay. So he was a long-term, I guess, astronomer at the DAO, and so there will be something for those who want to attend. And as I say, I'll try and get this link into the chat. So, anyways, so David, I think you'll be up first.
Oh, okay. Okay, a few of us have been attending a exoplanet transit course. So we've been kind of busy sort of practicing the trade, I guess, so to speak. We're actually using the RASC robotic telescope, and we're using a method called differential photometry. So basically, I think most of you have probably seen these light curves that actually result as a planet will go across its sun or its star. You see this little bit characteristic dip in this light curve. It's considered a time series where you're measuring brightness over time. And the way differential photometry is done is that there are comparison stars, which are of consistent brightness, and then your target. So the target is constantly compared, like there were 420 frames in this particular subject that we had. So 420 frames, they're taken very quickly, one after the other. The eclipsing, I think the period is only a few hours. So you just collect as many frames as you can. And the differential photometry, what it does is once you align all the frames, you identify, I don't think you even necessarily have to identify comps. You just have to identify where your target is. And then the software is able to choose reasonable comparison stars around it. And then it will basically generate this light curve. So we're using a piece of free software called Astro Image J. And the reason why I have this page is I wanted to show you where to find the software and also to give you a couple of other references. There's actually an exoplanet section of the AAVSO that's led by Dennis Conti. And this is an excellent seminar. If you're even in the least bit interested in exoplanet transit research, check out this webinar that Dennis did, because it's very insightful. It explains it probably better than I can. There's a transit light curve tutorial as well, so you can follow this. This is quite a good tutorial as well. A lot of data actually is available. You don't necessarily have to do the photography yourself, though a lot of the stuff that is done in the capture will be very familiar to anybody who's done astrophotography in terms of calibration frames. We don't do stacking, but we do use calibration frames to make sure the material is as clean as possible, because what we're doing is comparing brightnesses on the frame. So if there are imperfections of the sensor that need to be dealt with, they do need to be dealt with. So we have dark frames, we have biased frames, and we have flat fields as well. So yeah, I really recommend maybe checking this out. It's quite possible, like this course is almost over, but it's quite possible they'll offer it again. Okay, there are no questions. I'll move on to this. By the way, all these references I'm going to put into the chat after I talk about my second item.
David, what sort of camera were they using?
The RASC group is using, I think, a Kodak chip. It's one of the ST16300 chips. It's the classic chip. I can't remember the exact number.
So it's a CCD rather than a CMOS sensor.
Absolutely. I don't know. You probably asked that question for a purpose, because there's a constant debate in photometry whether or not CMOSs are up to the task. CCDs have quite a good linear response, or they can, and they have very deep well depth. Now, it's not that modern day CMOS can't do that, but a lot of the old timers still like to use the traditional CCD because they understand its characteristics. I think people will probably change their mind because CMOS sensors now have such low read noise that it would be beneficial just for that alone. And I think the most modern ones, the most recent ones, have extremely deep wells as well. So that means they have really wide dynamic range. One of the problems with photometry is you don't want to saturate your stars, because if a star saturates a pixel, it means that the reading from the pixel is kind of bogus, right? So basically it clips. So if it gets too much exposure, it'll keep reading the same number even though it got more exposure, if that's sensible. So that process we call clipping, and you'll get clipping if you don't have a wide dynamic range. Yeah, it's quite challenging. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a simple process. It's easy enough to understand, but it's kind of very fiddly. It requires a lot of really careful work in terms of building the flat fields and making sure you've dealt with things. And not only that, once you get the light curve, there's a whole process where you look at it and you try to look at what might be considered an outlier, and you start to remove them from the curve, just in case there are some that are really can't be used for one reason or another. And of course, things happen, right, when you're imaging. Everybody knows that. Okay, so the other thing, I actually attended a webinar yesterday that was put on by the Montreal Center, and they invited Pete Williamson, who's quite well known in the UK, and he wrote a couple of articles recently about processing data, raw data from NASA. Now, I know this is not new news, but he actually shed some light on some of the tools, and he's actually been using processing of publicly available data to sort of engage youth. So I guess kids really like tech, so he may not be able to get them to look through a telescope, but he could get them to sort of play around with some data, and certainly that can be done. There's quite a wide variety of data available at NASA, and he only showed us two data sources, one for Perseverance and one for Junocam, and you can see them here. The other thing that was of note was he tried to make sure that the tools were no barrier to people doing it. So a lot of the schools don't have a lot of money, so in the UK, so they're constantly looking at either free or inexpensive software. So the GIMP, I think most people know GIMP, that's kind of open source. It's absolutely free. But I was actually quite intrigued by Affinity Photo. Now, I have been using it because it's available on the iPad. And I didn't realize that it had a astrophotography stacking process inside of it. So, I played with it for a little while now, and if somebody asked me what kind of image editor to get without, buying something like Adobe Photoshop, I would say this is pretty well the one, actually. It's got stacking capability. It's got most of the same kind of processes that Adobe Photoshop has, and some that it doesn't as well. Like, I was quite shocked by some of the functions that actually work at 32-bit. And you start doing that in even regular Photoshop and you can't do it. A lot of the filters are missing, but not so with Affinity Photo. So it's pretty intriguing, and it's inexpensive as well. I think it's sitting at $80 rather than the perpetual $20 a month you have to pay. Well, more than $20 American a month you have to pay for Photoshop CC. So yeah, so any of these things, I'm just gonna throw those links in for both this and for the exoplanets. And if anybody has any questions, or if they would, or anybody would like to have a lead workshop with either of these two topics, just let me know. So I'm just gonna stop my share and I'm gonna throw those links into the chat.
Yeah,
So
Affinity Photo is a good option, and the astronomy features were just added in the last major release, so it's a
yeah,
fairly recent addition.
I was surprised by them, Joe, because I didn't think it had that. And then all of a sudden, Pete was showing these things, and he says, "Oh yeah, you can use it for stacking." And I actually tried it. I tried it with a set of my files, and it does work. I would not say that it's up to the same standards as PixInsight. It doesn't have the same kind of controls that PixInsight does, but it's a fraction of the price. So
Yeah, I think your comparison with Adobe plugins is fair, because that's roughly what the same offers, the same functionality.
yeah, for sure.
David, I just had a question about the CCD chips.
Yeah.
That they've been using. Is there a preference for anti-blooming CCD chips, or just chips
yeah,
with a full linear response? Because
anti-blooming is not good, because basically what happens is your length of your linear range is shorter, because what happens is when you get near the top, it'll clip because it doesn't want to produce those spikes. So.
Well, and I was just asking because I remember that our 8300 had anti-blooming, and I think the linear range was only up to like 60% well depth, and then after that it was dramatically compressed.
Yeah.
So with something like they have on the RASC telescope, would that even be a linear range, or would it be more akin to what they have in those CMOS anyway?
It is linear. I just actually finished characterizing my sensor yesterday, actually, and it's quite interesting. I thought I would start off with really low exposures and just build up, just in a reciprocal way, as you should. But I got some really weird results. And then I looked at the AAVSO guidelines, and they said, you shouldn't have anything shorter than 10 seconds. So I said, okay. So they said 10 seconds and try to get at least 10,000 ADU out of it. So I started at 10,000 ADU at 10 seconds. And then I just added 5 seconds each time, and perfectly linear from about up to about, I think, like 55,000 ADU, which is actually pretty good, actually, because it caps out at 65, right?
And you're running a Sony sensor, right?
Sony sensor, yeah, XMAR. It's an Attic 460.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, so I just threw that stuff into the chat. If anybody is curious or wants more exposure to it, just let me know.
Great, thanks very much. Should we have a look at solar photos? Maybe Joe, you show us your local one. And thanks to Bill for sending that out on RASC Vic. I think it was yesterday, to have a look at the sun, because it was certainly very interesting.
So this was taken yesterday using a weight filter, basically. It was the, I use my DentaView Class A solar filter, glass filter on a, and this was 500 millimeters using a digital SLR. So you can see there are this big group of sunspots, which would have been visible today. I don't know if it'll still be visible tomorrow. It's heading in this direction here. And then there's this tiny sunspot up here. So they were both visible yesterday. It was a good show. I didn't have a chance to get my hydrogen alpha filter or telescope out, but I managed to get the white filter out anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a look at the hydrogen alpha as well, and there were some very interesting prominences, some very long prominences on mine on the left side, which is actually the right side of the sun. And interestingly enough, if I fiddled with the tuning on my filter, I could see there were actually two, but I couldn't see them at the same time. So I guess one was further back or whatever. So if I tilted the filter a little bit more, I could see one above where I was seeing the other one, and the lower one vanished, and then I could see that there was yet a second one. So they seemed exceptionally long. I don't know if I've seen a prominence that was sticking out that far from the sun before.
Yeah, that group that I showed in the lower part of the image was an M-class solar flare generator. So it had plenty of energy to create an M-class.
I couldn't see on your image. Is that little chain of sunspots running off of it? It was almost like a right angle to it.
Yeah.
Like there was the big dark group, and then there was a little tiny skinny chain running at right angles.
Yeah, it shows up on Arnold's photo a little better.
Does it? Okay. Yeah, I may have
Or-
not had focus quite sharp enough to reveal that. We'll go to Alberta. They always have better
Yeah,
photos.
let's do.
But Joe, in fairness to you, it's a single shot, right?
Oh yeah,
It
no,
is.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great photo. So if you put the white light image, there we go. This is from space weather, and
SDO,
it's showing the AR regions, and the one that I'm talking about is that 2860 down there.
And is that what you were talking about, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what Arnold used, he shot both. He's taken that white light. He's got a calcium K line and hydrogen alpha using his ZWO camera. He's taken 2,000 to 3,000 subs at 0.3 and 2.7 milliseconds to get these images, and he's oriented the images so they match the white light photo. So the first one is the calcium K, which is 393.4 nanometers. And that's his lunt. He's got a 2-inch lunt for that on a 70 mil refractor. And his comment on that is with the K-line filter, they display areas in the supergranulation cells that are brightest and strongest in areas of high magnetic fields. And it also tends to be in the lower area of the sun, so they're a little bit cooler. But they show those active regions really well. And you can see that there's some that are not associated with sunspots that appear to be fairly active.
I'll just go back to the original one there again. So we've got this
25,
cluster, that cluster, and that.
2859 and 2861 have some connection, but there's a lot of stuff in between.
But we're seeing, these are not showing up as sunspots.
Yeah.
And then hydrogen alpha.
And then the hydrogen alpha, that's he's used the same telescope basically with a single stack, and what he's done with the color on these images, he's colorized them in GIMP so that they kind of represent the parts of the spectrum that are similar to what you would see with the naked eye. So you can see again that it shows those two or three active regions that have a difference to the background. The level of detail in these images is really quite good for a 2-inch scope.
And I would say that I think the prominences don't show up terribly well in this one, but I think he's catching a bit of the one I was describing.
Yeah, he's
and there was another one up here.
Yeah, he's probably got that one tuned specifically for the surface features, not the prominences.
So it was quite amazing, but you can kind of get the impression, and I was seeing it looked like it was even sticking out even further than that. So that's a part of it there anyway. So. Yeah, quite a show.
Yeah, it is. So we're finally seeing some activity on the sun.
Yeah, so thank you for passing those along, Dave. That's great. And Joe, that's good to see a local shot.
Yeah, question. I think on the astronomy night, Brock, you showed an image of you projecting the sun with your Dobson on a whiteboard. Did you have an eyepiece in? I tried to do that, but I had an eyepiece in. Do you do it without an eyepiece in?
I did it with an eyepiece. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just a matter of getting the right distance and.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
you got to get the right focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so just play around with it and without staring at the sun directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
have
it was
a-
a little, I wouldn't use a really high end. It was a super cheap eyepiece. I wouldn't use one of my better ones because I think moving things around, I think I heated up the inside of the eyepiece. It's always been a little foggy after that.
Mm.
Yeah, they do have
Don't use
recommendations.
your Nagler
Yeah.
or
No,
anything,
no,
Like,
use your
They-
$20 freebie that came with the scope.
Well,
They also have restrictions for the size of scope as well, because for the same reasons, because building up heat. So if you're using a refractor, for instance, I don't think they recommend anything bigger than, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches or something like that.
Okay, so I shouldn't use a scope for looking at the sun, even with.
No.
a pair of 10 by 50 binoculars that I
Yeah,
use.
that's cheap, and
I put
not
a
gonna
big
hurt you.
cardboard shield in the front
Yeah.
that leaves only one side of the binoculars open, and then I try to focus low and get it on a piece of cardboard. And that actually works pretty well. If you're doing any kind of public work, trying to show people in the public that what the sun looks like, that's the safest and probably the most accessible way of doing that.
And of course, you need to use a solar filter.
Yeah. Well, I used to do that on my driveway out in front of the house, and I would capture kids as they went by on the way to school and say, "You want to have a look at the sun?" and let them look at the cardboard. It was pretty good.
Yeah, a cardboard
when there
box
was
with
sunblock.
a white sheet of paper on the inside works really well
Yeah, that works too. Yeah.
if you're doing projection, because then you
Yeah,
have a
cuts off
nice
the
dark
ambient-
field inside.
Yeah, cuts out the ambient lights. Otherwise, you need a dark umbrella to kind of give you a shadow to work in.
And just for the public safety warning, I do remember a story of somebody who left a 20-inch out on their deck with an eyepiece in it. And it blew up like a-
We kind of did a little bit of that for the Venus transit way back.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Let's see who else. So I think John, you had something for us.
Yes, I do. It's not astronomical, but it competes with astronomy. So I'll show it to you anyway. Okay, so this is a little video that shows what I call openings. This one was out, this particular one was outside, so it's bobbing around in the wind a little bit.
Very nice.
So that's one, and I've got another one here. This is one that shows almost the total time of the opening. So it started in one day and went through till the next morning. And that's it. The reason I say this is in competition is that this is Wendy's hibiscus plant. And she's got a whole bunch of plants, and we share space on the patio. So sometimes I have to take pictures of the plants.
There you go.
Very good. Great.
Good accomplishment, John. You got the lighting consistent and not too much jittering around.
Well, it was a bit challenging, that last one that you saw in particular went on all night. So, sorry, no, the first one, I guess, that I showed you went on all night. And I had to manage to get some lights that would just give enough light that I could photograph it. Anyway, it worked.
John, did you use an interferometer, intervalometer on that?
I did. That was a photograph once every 3 minutes.
Yeah, those things open fast. We had a lily out in front of the garden this year that was opening so fast that you could almost stand there and watch it.
Yeah. The hibiscus go very slowly at first, but there is a point
Yeah,
when
and
they're
they,
mostly out when you can almost see them opening. Kind of neat.
Oh, it's really neat. Thank you. And Bill, I think you said you had something. Is that right?
Sure. I've been playing this week, and it's going to be going on for some time when I can get it, and it'll have to go into the winter too because there's part of it. So did anybody at the GA attend the session put on by the history committee where Clark Muir was talking about how he'd done some historical observing based on Galileo's first manuscript on the Jupiter and how he used a telescope and stuff like that. So he created what best could be represented by one of Galileo's telescopes, and then did some observations of Jupiter and Saturn and trying to trace the stars and the Pleiades and things like that, and repeating his sketches. And so the center actually owns a telescope that was made by Colin Wyatt, is it Colin? That is a replica. And I always thought it was kind of just like this little, like it's a beautiful little telescope. I actually just threw a picture into my Zenfolio of last night because I kept forgetting to take pictures of what I was doing. And so Sid had the telescope and he got it, he gave it to me. And it has this wonderful little mount that actually makes it quite difficult to use because it's kind of an equatorial mount. And so it's actually easier if I just prop it up on the roof of my car and wiggle it around because the field of view is incredibly narrow. It's only, well, I took it apart to clean it because the lens had a lot of fingerprints on it from being at public events for people to just look at. And when I did that, I saw that I could actually widen the opening to make it bigger because the opening was actually too small. And so I cut a new sort of opening to it to make it at biggest 26 millimeters in diameter. And when I had the lens out, yeah, there we are. See, that's Jupiter in the distance. And the focal length, I could see on the side of the front lens, it actually says that it's 1,000 millimeter focal length. So that makes it like about an f/37 telescope or whatever. It barely gives the full field of view of all the moons across from Jupiter. And it's been very interesting. I've been going out each night. I've gone out 3 times now to try and sketch the moons to see if they then match up. So I haven't been figuring out where the moons are. I've been observing it and I've been communicating with Clark, and he actually said it'll be interesting to see what you get when you look at Saturn, because when Galileo looked at Saturn, Saturn was pretty edge on. So he couldn't really see it very well. And he could not see that there were rings. He could just see what he said were ears. But actually now that Saturn is tilted, even at 27 millimeters of aperture, so probably around 20 times magnification, I can clearly tell that they're rings. And I've set up beside it. One night I had my little refractor where I have these flappers that I made to make little openings to judge smallest aperture for splitting double stars. And I actually found one that I had that was actually just around 1 inch in size, which is around 27 millimeters. And using a magnification very similar, I was getting pretty much the same image. And then last night, I took down my 6-inch Dob, where again, I put a cardboard in front of it with just this little 27 millimeter hole. And then I put a 55 millimeter Flossel in. So I was getting about the same magnification. And it's been really interesting comparing the views because they're identical almost. It's just, it's really super hard to point because the field of finding Jupiter is just tough, or Saturn. And then last night, actually, I went down early enough to get Venus. And I just chased it towards the horizon. It was hard to find too. I've lined it up on trees and then raised it up. This was with it again, sitting on the roof of my car so that I could just move it around quickly.
So,
And,
so Bill, what are you using for sighting? I noticed that you have
Zero.
zero.
Nothing.
Okay. You
Nothing.
You just viewing along the edge of the tube?
Well, see, those rings that you're seeing in that picture, the tube is actually supposed to go in them.
Oh,
But I've found it difficult because I'm kneeling on the ground and that pushes it down even further. So I found it easier because Colin just made it with like strings to tie it to it. So I've strapped it on top of it, but those rings don't help at all in pointing the telescope. It's just guessing. So I'm trying to get it in the general area. And then I'm sort of doing it like using a telerad or a red dot where you keep both eyes open, or like a single microscope where you keep both eyes open. And so at a point I can see the little dot flash by, and then I know to bring it back a little bit. But because it's this equatorial orientated mount, it's really hard to kind of swing it around. I have to have it really set loose, all the clutches, because there's little tightening knobs, but I set it really loose. And so, yeah, it is good because I can actually track once it's on. Because if I line it up on Polaris, it's actually pretty good for tracking, for nudging it along and keeping a good line.
I don't think Galileo would have had
Oh,
that.
he would not have had an electric equatorial mount.
Well, no, not electric even. I'm just talking about even.
No, an equatorial. He would not have had an equatorial mount. He would have had an Altaz.
No, actually what he used was, it looks like it was just a pole that
A
you
pole.
stood at. Like
Just
it
a
just
pole, yeah.
like a monopod kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's why when I was doing Venus, because I was really racing it, I just put it on the roof rack of my car, the little bars, so that I could stand. And that was much easier to find. But because I wanted to do the sketches too for like Jupiter and Saturn, because I want to do a series of night by night by night. That was what he used to show that the moons were changing their position.
So
along the axis.
Bill, how bad was the flare? I mean, they're uncoated lenses, right? And it's very bright.
Yeah, because they're very simple lenses. I think I think Colin used the same lenses, so it's same idea. Like there's a very simple convex concave thing. Like the eyepiece is, I don't know what the focal length of the eyepiece is. I'd like to talk to him to find out, because I don't know if he ground them or if you could buy them, right? Because they're just single glass.
I suspect maybe they're Edmund Scientific kind of lenses that you can buy, or I don't know.
But it's been just fun to do. There's quite a bit of flare and a bit of chromatic aberration, but if you concentrate hard, I could, like last night, 2 of the moons were just so close together. And later when I went and looked on like a mapper, you could see they were heading towards each other.
What time were you out? I was out last night as well.
Gosh, I was probably home by.
Well, they were quite spread
10:30.
out, like at around 10, I guess 10 to 10:30. They were quite spread out.
Or was it the night before? My nights are blurred.
It wasn't last night because they were spread out last night.
One night they were almost like peanuts. Because
what a neat project, Bill.
Because I cut a bunch of different apertures to be able to quickly interchange them. Because if I just pull off the front cell, I can just pop these little like washers in and then put the thing back on. And so I can dim. But I think that his largest telescope was 37 millimeters. And the earlier ones were smaller. Colin had just made it with it's under 20. And it's hard, but it's quite amazing how, like with my 6-inch Dob with just the 1-inch aperture, boy, was it sharp. I could see just little pinpoints of light of the moons. They were just perfect dots. And even with the Galileo scope at 27 millimeters, you can sort of see that there's a band. You can see, I guess it's the southern, I don't know which one, the darker one. I think that's the northern equatorial band. You can see that there's this bit of darkening there, even with some flare coming off it. But it's just a sliding tube inside, one inside the other. So you can just slide it out till you get focus. But I keep forgetting to sort of mark where the focus is. So at first it's hard because the minute it's out of focus, the star is so widened that you can't find it. You know, it's like panning around with binoculars in daylight when you haven't set them up for nighttime and you can't focus on the infinity. So it's going to be interesting. I don't have a clue how he would have sketched the Pleiades. Or
couple of questions, Bill. First one is, it must be pretty tricky to keep the planet in your field when it's in such a small field and it's moving. So was that a problem for you?
no, because it's on this mount. The mount, when I've got it aligned pretty well with the north, it just,
Oh, okay.
it moves like an equatorial mount. So I only have to do right ascension.
You
If
just
I've
Colin
go
made
got-
a,
If I've got it
Colin made
locked
a
down,
wooden equatorial mount for it. Very simple one.
yeah.
Right, I
problem-
understand now.
The
Okay.
problem is that where the head attaches to the base, you can't tighten it really well. I've got to put something sticky underneath.
Mhm.
So if you
It wiggles
open it
inside of
up,
the mount.
it's the whole head will swing, and then you're just starting over again, trying to find where you were, because it is a tiny, but actually it's not, it stays in the field of view quite long.
Oh, that's good.
It's, you know, what is it? What's the rate of ascension? I forgot. I just had it in my head.
What
earlier
do
today.
you think the focal length is, Bill?
It says it's 1,000. It says it right
1,000.
on the. It's
Wow,
1,000.
it's kind of long for.
It's a meter. It's a meter telescope. It says it right on the edge of the lens, the front lens. It's written right on the side. When I had it out and I'm cleaning it, and then I looked at the edge, and it said F1000, which is the equivalent to the, you know, when I have it out, it's about a
It's an
meter.
F-37.
Yeah. And I
So
could get, and my Dob, when I had the little aperture mask on, I think that was like F44 or something like that. So, and I was looking, although it's hard to tell because the 55 Flossel has quite a large field of view. So it's hard to tell if they're the same size, but it kind of looked like it when I really focused on, concentrated on just the disk of Jupiter. They appeared pretty similar. So I think I was getting, because that's what the guess is, that his eyepiece was about a 50 millimeter eyepiece.
The other question I have is an interesting one to think about with your project. You know, if you look at all of Galileo's sketches, some of them are really pretty darn good for detail. Some of them are a little wobbly, but one question that I've read about is whether the glass was as clear and as good that he used as modern glass. It probably was not, because glass was available, but even the eyeglasses that they made for people in those days were kind of cloudy and murky with bubbles in them and whatnot. So it'd be interesting to compare, you know, what you can see with modern glass with what he was getting. You should be able to do a little bit better sketches than he was able to do, but I don't know.
Yeah.
John, it's funny you bring that up because on the internet there's this fellow that takes challenges, and he actually built a telescope totally from scratch. Like, I think he started off thinking that he could make it from silica, like from sand for the glass, but he ended up just taking glass and melting it. So he took it to a glass shop and he melted it. But when he cut off the chunks, he kind of hammered it into place, but then he had a whole bunch of bubbles, unfortunately, right? And he could never really get it clear. So he didn't really see too much through them.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's hard to say. They were making glasses at that time.
Hmm.
They were making eyeglasses. That's where the first telescopes came from
That's
the
right.
people. So you don't know. Glass might have been better than we think, because it would have been really thin. Like this lens is really thin.
Yeah, the eyeglasses were mainly made in Belgium, and I think that's where Galileo got his glass from.
Yeah. And I looked at the moon on the first night. The moon came up before I left. It was surprisingly sharp.
Mm.
You had to kind of move it around to see. but I could actually see more than I thought of the surface. I think you can get about a little more than a quarter of a moon in the field of view. But it was surprisingly cool to look at the moon through that little telescope. It was really neat. But having to move from star to star to star to try and sketch the Pleiades, or he did the Sword of Orion, and I think he did the complex around the head. So he must have been doing this in the winter, because all the sketches seem to be winter stuff. Because I went to the Gutenberg library, the free online library, and was able to download to iBooks his what is it, Starry Messenger or whatever it is.
Sidereus Nuncius.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I have that now. So it's going to be interesting, but it's the Venus one last night where it looked kind of like an egg, because it's at about 70% or something like that. And it was cool to see. So,
Very neat,
and
Bill.
to be able to see the rings of Saturn in something that small. And then when I swung around and did it with my 1-inch F44 Dob, I could see essentially the same thing, just a little bit sharper, because it's, better lenses and stuff, mirror. But so it's going to be fun. It's going to stretch on for months now. So if anybody wants to come look through like a historically type telescope, let me know and we'll go down to the field and you could look at Jupiter the way they did that, put an old man in jail.
So Bill, make sure the ears are accurate, okay, on Saturn.
You could see that they were rings, and you could see that one went behind and one was in front. It was, maybe, I know it's like information bias that you already know that that's what it's doing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That was what Clark said. Try and wipe that from your brain, but it's really hard. But I just was staring at it, and yeah, it was clear that it wasn't just like looking at the Saturn Nebula, where it's just pointy out the sides. It looked more round. Yeah, so it's fun.
First off, super cool project. Second off, after all of the teasing about focal length, I was curious, so I looked up what the Great Lick Refractor was, because it's pretty much the pinnacle of refracting telescopes that were ever assembled. I don't count Yerkes. And it was 300 years on, more or less, F19. So they managed to get an entire stop out of it in 300 years.
And that took what, a century and a half?
Oh, more, like it was what, 1606 or something to
Oh, several centuries.
1887, I think, for Lick. Anyway, and like a achromat instead of a single lens design too. So different scale, of course, but I just found it funny.
That was a huge improvement, but it took a while. Very neat. Well, keep us posted, Bill.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try and figure out a pole mount to put it on, like a mono thing.
Make it really accurate. Yeah.
Well, it's just easier to point because I don't want to put a red dot on it.
Well, why don't you put a red, just rubber band a red dot to the
Yeah,
barrel,
but I want to to add the same level of difficulty.
Not
Oh,
historically correct.
Yeah. Because otherwise it would be easy. I would strap it to a real equatorial.
Yeah, why not?
I could strap it to my 20-inch knob and just like have it go to wherever I wanted to,
I'm
right?
sure,
I
Bill, I'm
could
sure
look
you could
at
get
like,
it onto, you can get it onto a Lasmati D plate or a Vixen rail.
yeah, see, the whole time when I was there and it was dark enough, I wanted to try and point it at something in Sagittarius and pan around, but you know, it was too murky. The transparency wasn't good enough, because that'll be something to try, because I know now that there are things out there that he didn't know were out there.
So Bill, can you do afocal photography with it?
Gosh,
Can you put your iPhone next to it, through it?
that would be difficult.
I just want to back up for a second to the historical authenticity here. I feel like we need to go and look at how they dressed in Italy in 1606 and
Put a funny hat on.
up your wardrobe a little bit to really get you in the,
Yeah,
the
that's
right mind space.
That's what Sid said when I was visiting him and he was giving me the scope. He said, I want to see a picture of you in like an old outfit. So,
well, Jim Hesser has the outfit. You guys are both about the same size. So
okay.
you could borrow it.
Okay, that
Photo op time.
yeah. I would do that if somebody tracked it down.
And seen in the chosen cricket pitch. This fellow from another time.
When I was there last night, there was someone riding around the field in a horse. Oh, and I managed to get them to turn the lights off on the work yard. Friday afternoon, I went there and nobody was there, but the garage door was open, and I went in and turned the light out. Like I knew where the switch was. I turned the lights out because they leave this side wall light on that just shoots. It covers the whole field in light. And so I thought, oh, I should just do that so I just put a little Post-it note that said, please, could you turn this light off when you leave? People that do astronomy use this field, because I know that other people go there, like people that don't even know we exist. I've seen them there. And when I went back, the other light that I had left on, they turned off also. So who knows? I think this week I might drop off a case of beer and say thank you. It might keep the light off. Maybe if they just leave the Post-it note up, because the guy, when I caught him once, he said, oh God, I didn't even know that light was on. I'm sorry, it's like, I'll turn it off. I don't even, it stays on all day because nobody's there at night and nobody sees it in the day. So could be winning.
That would be good. Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing that. Brian, you have a photo to show us.
Yeah, thanks. I'll share screen here. I've just impromptu here, but I've started that Explore the Moon program. And where is the, yeah, so I was out the other night catching a few craters on the terminus or terminal. And then this is just my Pixel phone up against the eyepiece. It's probably at a 25 mil with a filter on it. But what caught my attention is and I may not say this correctly, is it the Maurolycus crater in the southern hemisphere here? Am I pronouncing that right? The other Maurolycus, named after the Italian mathematician.
I don't know. We need Randy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
We'll accept your.
Okay. Anyway, it's quite prominent. You can see it in the top corner here. But I didn't know, if you go down on the moon's surface today, you could be in for a big surprise, because I'm sure I saw a bear sitting in the middle of that crater.
Nice.
Wow. That is neat.
Yeah, that was interesting. And the other optical illusion that popped out when I was looking, this is with I was born Bill's 7.5 Spears Waller, and I think I popped my my new Barlow in there as well to get it a little zoomed in. But I experienced what was called a relief inversion. And everything just
Right.
popped out. It looked like I was looking at a bunch of pillows. And
Yeah,
I was surprised. And then I looked back at the photos, and as I zoomed in, the relief changed from being convex craters to concave. It was a little bizarre.
Like an optical illusion.
It's an optical illusion, and I just
well,
kinda
it's
Googled-
actually just your brain
Yeah,
being
that's right.
confused because the shadowing is not the same on the moon as it is that we're wired to observe here on Earth.
Yeah. So that was a experience. Like, I don't know if I'm staring at this long enough, it might just pop on me again. But anyways, it was kind of fun, and I'm just sketching my way across the surface now. When go both ways. But thought I'd just share that little moon in the crater.
As Dan said, your photos have incredible amount of detail. I guess that pixel built-in HDR or image processing is really pretty spectacular.
I wonder, Joe, I wonder if it's doing VR as well.
Yeah, I
Like
don't
a
know
different
what
edition.
magic they're using. I know they're known for their good, well, different photos, let's put it that way, from
I
other
didn't,
cell phones.
sorry, Joe. I didn't want to interrupt, but the other thing I noticed is that every time I've done afocal, there's always been chromatic aberration, and this is just a clean
Yeah.
field. It's
Yeah, and I haven't used like sometimes I'll center it, but I don't apply any subsequent filters. I don't select a filter option when I save it. I just usually crop it. But it takes great pictures of the moon. Not great. I mean, you can get Jupiter and the moons in it. I did that the other night at Cattle Point, but and star fields like Pleiades turns out not too bad. And I captured the Orion Nebula with it. But I did send a note to David Lee, but I wanted to thank him and the panel for the Friends of Dominion Observatory Astronomy, like the introduction to astroastronomy that was done a couple days ahead of last week's Astro Cafe. So that made the viewing of the images on the Astro Cafe on the Monday night a lot more enjoyable, because I understood all the kind of better the mechanics and the software and the tools it takes to take the pictures. But this is just as an eye, like a pixel up against an eyepiece of a daub, but have to invest in a little bit better equipment to get your pictures.
What eyepiece was that?
This well, it's either I was going between my 25 mil, just the Celestron one that came with it's a puzzle, came with a kit, and then as I said, I was using Bill's set of I don't know which, the Spirit Wallers. There's a 7.5 and a 10 to get into the details.
You know, Brian, you might want to try stacking. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't do that. Just take a whole bunch of frames and register them and stack them. Yep.
So I can do that with the photos I take on a phone.
I don't see why you couldn't. I mean, just do a
good.
whole series of them.
Okay.
Anytime.
Yeah, I'll try that. Because it's really impressive when I show pictures like this to family, friends, they're quite impressed.
Would it work if you
What
shot
would you
vid-
use for processing that? Auto stackered, or what would do the best job on a lunar surface?
Well, probably,
Autos-
Registax, I guess, to start, but then there's algorithms you can use, right? As
Auto
well.
stackered is easier.
Okay. I mean, the original ones were like Registax, but I'm sure there's
Mhm.
better ones now.
Would he be able to shoot video and do that?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could do
Absolutely.
video too.
You'd have to convert it. Yeah, you can't use like any of the compressed videos with AutoStacker.
You can
or
use
Registex. You
pip.
have to use pip
You use
to convert
pip
them.
to do that. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Cool.
Very neat. Well, thank you for sharing that.
That's a
so,
nice bear.
yeah. So I think
Yeah,
that
safe distance too.
that might be all we have for this evening. But before we wrap up, just a reminder that next Monday is Labor Day. So we won't be here. And we had hoped to start in September having some in-person component to Astro Cafe, but looking at the current health orders that are in place would make that quite challenging. It says things like people having assigned seating and not moving around and such like. So that would mean we'd have to know who was coming ahead of time. Once we reached a capacity, we'd have to turn people away, et cetera, et cetera. So I think at this point, our feeling is that we're better to stay with Zoom and stay with this format.
Chris, do you think we would have to check for vaccination as well? Would
That
we be
it looks
obliged?
like it's coming. I was out of town last week, and one of the places I was at is was offering a cave tour, and that's what they've been told is because they're a non-essential service that come the middle of next month, they are going to have to require this, what I guess they're calling the vaccine passport.
Yeah, that as of the 13th, I believe.
Yeah,
September
and that's going to be required to go into restaurants, I believe, and all non-essential services. So yes, I think we would fall under that as well. So, you know, we just can't really see a way to make this work too easily. It'd be a lot of work for the people who, you know, are here. And then also we don't know how well the internet's going to work there anyways. But so I think we'll, although we have got the space available to us, I think we'll stay with this format for now and see what happens as we get into the fall and see if we, I'm hoping we're going to see some of the, I think the experience that I've seen in other countries is you get another ramp up, but because so many people are now vaccinated, that it kind of, there just aren't, you know, the people who are going to get it and get it badly, the number of those people tend to be unvaccinated, and the number of them are declining as time goes on. So we'll hope that come later on that we're at a point where the numbers are really starting to fall again. But at this point, it's not looking terribly encouraging. And even in our region, there's quite a few new cases over the weekend, I see. So,
Chris, what is the university doing? Do you know?
Well, now I'm not there anymore.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Well, no, that's fine. I'm actually going to try and make contact with one of my former coworkers and find out. The last I heard was that they were not particularly going to check on vaccination, but now I think they are for people who are living in residence. So that's changed. The expectation from the government was that almost everything that could be would be in person. Now, is that going to change? I don't know. So at this point, that's the way they're heading. But as I say, I haven't heard anything in the last 2 weeks as if that's changed. I know certainly the last time I talked about the potential of getting our meeting room back again, they weren't in any point of renting out space to community groups yet. So I think it's been good we were able to get our portable back again, but I don't know if we'll have any luck getting any other space at this point. Or will we be able to even use it? I don't know if anybody has any comments or John and Joe have been involved in this conversation. I don't know if you want to say anything. But,
No, there's not much more to add to what you said. I mean, the rules are becoming pretty well unworkable for our meeting. As you said, the problem is we could try to hold it all right, but then people could show up and we'd have to turn them away if we're past capacity, which would really be pretty bad form. Or make them sit outside. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's kind of pointless to even go there.
So I think until we see the numbers drop back down again, and I guess we'd have to, and there's all sorts of restrictions on even trying to do things like we couldn't really do the coffee and cookies either.
No, everyone have to bring their own coffee.
Yeah.
And cookies?
and wear the mask. So, you know, you know,
Well, if we were a restaurant or we met in a restaurant, the rules
Yeah.
would be different, but
yeah.
we're not.
And that's not a huge space either. So that's the thing, is I'm not even sure how we determine how many people we could fit in that, because it's really only half the room we can use because of the lining up with the TV. So I don't think that really would house that many people if we were going to try and keep everybody 2 meters apart in all directions.
Well, we have upwards to 20 people, right?
Yeah, and I think we might be able to fit. I'm kind of was thinking about that space and what's, you know, maybe a dozen. I don't know. So anyway,
I think by the end of September, mid-October, we'll have a different scenario to look at, hopefully.
yeah, I hope this yeah, I think unfortunately the mask mandate went away too soon, and hopefully with it back now, and this idea of telling people that they can't do things unless they're vaccinated will maybe convince some other people to get vaccinated, let's hope, and then we'll be in a better position. And maybe, as you say, by October, and we'll have to see how the school years go respectively in the second, you know, elementary, secondary, and post-secondary, just to see how that goes. I mean, we managed to keep the schools open in this province last year, so hopefully we can again this year. So anyways, so that we have not been able to make the progress we hoped. But as I say, we've got the space available to us. So if, you know, things become a little more relaxed into the fall, and let's hope that's what happens, then we can revisit. Because it certainly would be nice.
Vacation time is over.
Yes.
People have stopped running around. Like a lot of seniors' homes have outbreaks because I think everybody traveled from everywhere to go hug grandma and gave her COVID again. And because there's so many outbreaks and so many, I bet you they're like a large number of the sick people, like the positive tests. I mean, my wife was talking about a friend who's posted the number in the Kootenays. He's just listing off this long list of seniors' homes that have outbreaks.
Yeah.
And it's because people have gone to go visit someone they haven't seen in a couple of years before they die. And now they're killing them.
Well, certainly the people, there's been a lot of people moving around this summer. So we certainly need that to settle down, I guess. So.
Yeah, the Alberta trailer up on the hill behind my place is pulled out yesterday. Go back to Alberta.
Okay, Chris, before we go, can I give some fashion advice to Bill Weir and his project?
Sure.
Yes.
Can I just share the screen here for a sec?
Please do.
What I'm supposed to look like?
Here we go. And just a second here. There we are. That's I guess Galileo in 2009. It was Jim Hesser, and that was for the let's see here. How do I get to another one?
Was that one of those music things?
No, that was the celebration. That was in Fairfield, I think.
Okay, because that's the scope, right?
Yeah, that's the scope.
It was the
What I
September
can't
Fairfield
do
thing.
here, I just wanted to show this one. This is Galileo giving a younger member a lesson.
Oh, I like the socks.
So the standard is there. I expect you to adopt that mode of dress there, Bill, to be really authentic. So,
Well, if Jim still has it, I'll go kneel down in the field and set up a camera.
Yeah, I think it would make your project even more valuable. That's all.
Well, just in case I write an article or something.
There you go. The full authentic experience.
Well, that would
National
definitely
Skynews.
be the headliner photo if you did that. Yeah.
There we are. Dan says so. It's in the fine print of lending the scope. So there you go.
Oh, Sid didn't say that. There was no paper handed over.
Very good.
He tried to get me to take away a mount that somebody had donated that's in his shed. And my comment when I saw it, I said, "Oh, nice anchor." He said, "Do you want it?" And my response was, "I don't have a sailboat."
There you go. See if you can mount it to the roof rack of your car as a new.
Oh, this is a seriously bad mount.
Yeah.
It's just junk.
I was up there last week and he tried to interest me in it too, but
Yeah, right. It's just it make a great anchor for
So
a
maybe
crab
metal
trap or something
recycling.
like that.
Send it away. Yeah. Okay, well, is there anybody else have anything for this evening?
No, other than I think that optimism about it clearing off is probably misplaced.
I don't think
Yeah,
it's
it's
gonna
hard to
It's
happen.
looking pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't see clearly. Anyways, well, thank you for attending tonight, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. So have a safe couple of weeks and an enjoyable Labor Day and all that. And we'll see everybody back here in September.
Good night.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks.